Thank you so much for joining the third CFO Bootcamp session. My name is Natalie Trudell, and I am the Marketing Manager at CR Group. Today's session is all about data and insights and how to turn your information into.
Those of you who are joining for the first time, I've been in this space for many, many years, and this particular session, today's session, is even more dear to me because of my engineering background. I think 40 years later now, we have technology in our fingertips, which is inexpensive, easily understandable, automatic, to do what we want to do, take data, convert into information, and then convert that into insights, and at the same time, speed it up. And you will see that today in today's session. We do this regularly, every day, if not every day, every week, every month. This also is very consistent with our framework of creating value for the enterprise. I won't spend too much time on all the level 7s, but we are really focused today on a combination of level 4, data to decision, and level 6. How can we use that component of our value framework to improve performance of the enterprise? Okay, so today is level 4 and level 6. And of course, to be able to do that, we may want to introduce, or we will introduce today, some high-level understanding about unique solutions that are required to get to where we want to get to. So what's my game plan for today's session? This is a very complex area. Not only that, it is evolving. It has all kinds of jargons. Just like in finance, we have our own jargons like EBITDA and EPS and return on invested capital. In this area, you also have a lot of jargon. And it's not necessary for the office of the CFO or the finance people to understand deep down what those items are, but at least we need to appreciate the jargon and the key terms that you'll come across if you start this journey of what I call data transformation or digital transformation. Okay, so I want to give you some exposure, high level again, with respect to this really ever-changing and digitally transforming world. Every day we find new things coming to the marketplace, and that tell you how organizations can use this digital transformation framework to improve their performance. I also want to put a little bit time to bring that home for finance. I'll show you some evidence that this is not only meant for the marketing folks or the operations folks, it also is meant for finance folks. And given this technology requires investment, and we are asked to justify these investments from an NPV or IRR or payback perspective, whatever technology you use for analyzing investment decisions, it's important for us to at least appreciate the benefits of it and of course the cost of it, and then make the decision as to whether you want to embrace this as a journey. Okay, and I'll share you one story and even one use case that will show you that a lot of things we do in finance, we can use these new technologies to reduce the time we spend on what I would call transaction part of our function and move that or repurpose those folks into analytics. And if we can do that, I think we'll give tremendous value to the enterprise. So here is what I mentioned in the last 2 sessions. Here is kind of my framework has been for a long time to say, what we are trying to do here from the CFO hat perspective is to assist the enterprise in all its dimensions that relate to performance. And of course, we can have strategy and strategy maps driving it, but we'll have KPIs and metrics, we'll have initiatives and projects, we'll have budgets and forecasts, and of course, we'll have to give or be made available multidimensional insights on our business. And the bigger the business, more dimensions you have to the business from an understanding perspective. And this digital transformation allows us to get there faster. In a sense, there isn't any new framework that has come about. It says, hey, you have, or we already have, a very robust performance framework. How can technology help? Because now we are having data everywhere. And how can we harness this data to help organizations do what we want to do, execute strategy to create a high performance enterprise? So before we dive into what it is and what it is not, let me start with some evidence that just came out by McKinsey in October. So it's very recent evidence. And this evidence comes from a survey McKinsey did with the CFOs. And let me spend some time on two key slides that I picked up from that McKinsey survey. It says what it is that we are trying to do, and those companies who are trying to embrace this new world, is the performance changing? Because if the performance isn't changing, then we're just wasting time, energy, money to get there. So they talked about 4 components of this digital transformation, or finance organizations of adoption of digital. And they talk about 4 things: advanced analytics for business operations, predictive analytics, that is what it typically meant for advanced analytics as opposed to analytics based upon historical data. Number 2 is robotics and artificial intelligence, really to see whether robotic automation would help us reduce transaction activities. One could consider them to be non-value-added activities, but we have to do it. For example, we have to process invoices coming to us. Question is, how can we process them faster and cheaper to get to what we want to get to? Number 3 is what I would call our traditional way of looking at data, but from a visualization perspective. So number 3 component of this digital journey that finance people can take or assist in taking for the enterprise is data visualization and connectivity. And number 4 is really kind of our core competency, so to speak, or core demand from our C-suite executives that says, you finance, allow me to give me or provide to me some insights on audits, some insights on costs, help me improve the budgeting forecasting process, and help me manage working capital as an example. So kind of our core things we do in finance. And the survey says those who have undertaken digital or automation technologies in any one of these 4 areas, have they performed better than those who have not? And you can see here that there is a significant difference between outperforming companies who adopt this compared to companies who don't adopt it and thus don't perform. So, and evidence, again, it's a survey evidence. What is performance is not defined as tightly as one would like, but it's at least telling us that these companies who each undertake this data transformation journey perform compared to those who don't. And again, you can see here that greater the technology adoption in finance against these four dimensions is related to improved performance. Okay, those who were significantly prepared before COVID perform better than those who kind of did not, and that's kind of natural because those who undertook this journey pre-COVID already had agile ways of looking at performance through this data lens, for example. So the reason to provide this evidence, which was kind of came in handy because it just came out last month, is to show or share with you that it looks like companies are doing it. It looks like companies who are doing it are actually outperforming their peers, and companies who were ready pre-COVID actually came out better during COVID. So clearly, this is a kind of a brand new territory for us because, you know, if you look at our accounting degrees and CFAs and CMAs, we never really come across at least the first 3 components. We definitely come across the 4th component, but we never come across these 4 components right in our kind of doorstep. So we need to kind of go beyond our traditional, or sometimes called transactional role, and be kind of adventurous, for lack of better words. So these 4 areas then are, as I mentioned in the survey, was advanced analytics, robotics, data visualization, and advanced analytics for finance, okay? But one thing that is very clear, at least in our experience for sure, is that you cannot do any of this unless you have the right data with the right granularity that is required for insights. And number two is we need to identify which stakeholder requires us to take this journey, because this journey is not costless. The question then is, we can't do everything for every stakeholder. Let's pick the stakeholder where we get the most value from an enterprise perspective, and focus our digital transformation journey in that kind of an aspect. And I'll tell you a little bit in a minute with some examples, okay? But overall, we're taking a journey to satisfy stakeholders' demands for better, faster information to make credible decisions. So what really is this digital transformation? To be frank with you, it's really integration of technology, multiple pieces of strands of this technology across all areas of business. So that's number one. But to me, that is just what I call clinical way of looking at it. Those organizations, and we are very happy to work with these organizations who are kind of forward looking. What happens to them is they also have to go through a cultural change, because technology means change. And we all know people don't like change. Especially, we've been doing in the finance world, same things over and over for many, many years. A new technology comes in and suddenly changes the way we work. And when we change the way we work, people are a little bit reluctant. So cultural change means communication. Cultural change means preparing organizations for this journey, giving them upfront knowledge about, hey, this is what we are trying to do. This is how we're going to impact you in your job, or we in our jobs, and how do we restructure when we adopt this technology. And clearly, it's not going to happen overnight. I will show an example or two so you'll know what I mean. Okay. I want to introduce one word, and I won't introduce too many jargons here. There is this new word that is out there and is being asked from time to time as to where is the organization today with respect to its adoption of social, mobile, analytics, and cloud. So sometimes referred to as SMAC, okay? And the reason this question is being asked is this desire by the enterprise to reduce what I call friction within and across internal and external customer or stakeholders, to increase kind of intimacy or increase collaboration. And one example of that in our world in finance is, wouldn't it be nice to have a budgeting, planning, forecasting, predictive analytics platform that is faster, cheaper, easier, and collaborative? Because we know organizations who go through multiple versions or multiple rounds of budgeting, and it's extremely time consuming. So that's what's called sometimes reducing friction within internal customer base. Our customers in this example are internal customers on whom we impose this, annual or quarterly budgeting rounds. Okay. If we do this right, of course, it will enhance effectiveness and efficiency on the people side, on the process side. And cloud is important because cloud allows us to be always on and become an anywhere, everywhere company. And for some of you who already have embraced the cloud, you know how beneficial this was during your COVID, when most of the office workers stayed home and you still wanted them to work as if they were in the office. And if everything was on-prem, this would have been very difficult. When things are in the cloud, it just becomes easy to manage that. So embracement of SMAC and what is the journey or the level of maturity is something we need to start thinking in the back of our head. Number two is, this digital transformation impacts the entire value chain. And every company is different. For those who are distributors with long supply chain, maybe inbound logistics is the place where most value would be added through digital transformation. An example would be, longer the supply chain, can we automate the process from our identification of what we need, and that automatically creates a purchase order to our key supplier, and they automatically put that in their planning function, reducing the friction in the inbound logistics, as an example. Okay, but you can start thinking about where your organization needs to be from a transformation perspective across the key components of your value chain. If you're B2C, maybe what is required is investment in marketing and sales, as an example, okay? And there are many components of the journey. One has to do with analytics, one has to do with insights, one starts thinking about big data and how can I use that for getting insights, okay? And here is where I think we enter into what I call the new terminology or the new jargon or new buzzwords in this world of digital transformation, okay? The one on the left side, we have been there before. We identify business processes and we start thinking about how to automate them. And these business processes are also within our planning, budgeting, or corporate performance management function, or getting data into data warehouse to provide visualization function. So the left-hand side, I call it not traditional necessarily, but we've been doing this in the 21st century more than in the 20th century. Okay, so nothing, the left box shouldn't frighten us or shouldn't bring us anything new. Is the middle and the right box is all new. This is machine learning and multiple components, or sometimes called business process automation, we using new technology, machine learning, advanced artificial intelligence, and rapid process or robotic process automation. And then this new whole world in this ML, AI, RPA world called artificial intelligence, okay? And I know many of you read on this these days, but if you think about this new journey, these are the new buzzwords that are coming out: machine learning, artificial intelligence, and robotic process automation, okay? So machine learning and artificial intelligence really allow us to make sense of volumes of data, either acquisition of data, and once we acquire that data, making intelligent insights by not having human involved, at least in phase 1, phase 2. So you hear things like IoT, Internet of Things, where machines have sensors on it, and the machines are providing data on their health, for example, to the manufacturer of those machines, who would have his technology team remotely somewhere monitoring this remotely and trying to fix it remotely once they find something. So if you want to do sort of predictive maintenance, you require Internet of Things or sensors that allow the manufacturer of this equipment to know the health of that equipment, no matter where that equipment is. As you can see here, having this kind of technology in place reduces friction between the customer who is using this equipment to produce things, and equipment unplanned downtime is a critical component or a critical KPI for that customer. The vendor is now saying to the customer that by having sensors in your machines and using this Internet of Things buzzword, will allow me to fix your machine before I believe it's going to break down, okay? Number two is, it's not just what I call sensor data. We also get now both structured and unstructured data, and mostly in social media. So if you're a B2C company where your customers are individuals, then you have to get data from sources that are outside your ERP systems, okay? And this data would be structured. Sometimes this data would be unstructured. So you're trying to sort of scour the cloud to find out what the customers need. And number two, also, you want to make sure that you provide them what they need through the best user experience on your website, because that's where they're buying from you. And now we start talking about facial recognition and trying to figure out when individual customers are coming to, for example, a department store or a retail store, looking at their facial expressions, what they would like or what they may want to buy. So when they come to point of sales, you can give them a discount, for example, to say, hey, you sort of like that. We saw you from facial recognition. Of course, you won't tell them necessarily. And here is a discount for you, a discount coupon for you. Okay, so we are trying to now harness the data that never existed before, and data that we don't even think is data, to harness that to create information to make better decisions. Okay. Well, how do you analyze this massive amount of data? Okay. Well, machine learning allows us to do that. And if you look at one of the stuff that McKinsey came out 2-3 years ago was, you can use machine learning as a technology or as a framework in many, many common activities. Okay. On the left is very, very simple, recognizing known patterns. This would be something like a invoice came in from a supplier. A machine learning recognize what that invoice is, what the supplier's name is, what the quantity is, what the amount is, and it recognizes that and puts it into our purchase order system, as an example. Okay, generates natural language. I know many of you use Outlook and you dictate on the Outlook. You don't type it anymore. Well, it didn't exist 2 years ago, or 3 years ago. In the scope it exists today, we can do that now, okay? Because the machine now understands natural language, okay? And of course, we can now start thinking about the new world where machines would also understand kind of a sensory perceptions or facial recognition and will allow us to optimize and plan. So the technology now allows us to do things that we never could think about doing at a price point that was prohibitively expensive 10, 20, 30 years ago. Okay. Number two, the other thing you must have heard now is, what? Data is the new oil or the new gold, if you want to call it. And sometimes if you're Facebook, you get into trouble, but data used correctly allows you to reduce friction between you and your customer. I can assure you that those of you who have Netflix, you know how easy they're making for us to choose our next 3 hours of nothing. To say, hey, you saw this movie or you saw this serial, here is another movie or another serial you would like, because they have mined this data from other customers and trying to figure out what they watched and what they liked. Okay, and you can name all the companies you deal with today who are trying to reduce friction for you to get to where you want to go. Amazon to buy things, Expedia to go somewhere, Facebook and Instagram to communicate with everybody, and of course, GPS, those of you who use Waze, you know how data is being collected, enhanced, and given to you in a shape and form where you trust the supplier for that information. Okay, so analytics is becoming extremely important, and real-time analytics is becoming even more important. Okay. Question then is, well, if it's all going out there, who will be actually impacted? Would I be impacted, as an example, in your business? Well, as I mentioned to you right from the beginning, the impact is going to be stronger in those industries where acquisition of data is cheaper or easier. Because without data, none of these technologies really are very useful. Okay. Once we understand where, if you have the richness of data, then you can start figuring out what problem I want to solve that will create value for my enterprise by leveraging the data that I'm collecting. So richer the data, better it is for us to use that data or leverage that data to make insightful decisions and use the technologies, the 4 buckets of technologies, technology types we talked about to enhance decision-making from that data. Okay. If you don't have data, it's going to be really difficult, because without data, not much we can do about that. So for those of you who want to kind of think like that, in my 7-level framework, the first 2 or 3 layers are extremely important, because that's where you have your data acquisition platforms, I call them. And if you don't have good data acquisition platforms, you cannot do any of this. So this journey, for those of you who don't have good data acquisition platforms, is going to take a longer time. And number 2, which sometimes we find in our clients, is they have data, but the data is really dirty or not clean, because people who are collecting this data or processes that are collecting this data have not figured out that data quality is important, and the dimensionality of data is also important. More dimensions to the data point, more analytics we can put on that data. So before one goes anywhere with respect to this new technology, one has to worry about, do we have the right level or the right granularity of data? And when we're collecting that data, is it clean? And is it multidimensional? Okay. So, all right, well, I understand on the business perspective, what about our own function, accounting and finance? Why should we even consider this digital transformation? Well, there are many, many places where we can consider this digital transformation. Okay, the first, I think, very close to our home is what we inflict on our colleagues, which is planning, budgeting, and forecasting. And there is constant pressure for us to increase efficiency and, of course, continuously improve quality of service, our own quality of service to our internal customers, and our own error rates. Okay, so right there and then we can start thinking about taking baby steps to say, okay, I know automation is a key phrase in this digital transformation journey. What automation I can get into my enterprise, which also helps me in my own function, my accounting and finance function, okay? Then we can start talking about leveraging the same information to create value for the enterprise across the board outside kind of our finance domain, okay? To look at what's happening with the revenue component. Is there a revenue loss? Do we have a lot of churn? How come we don't have repeat customers? What KPIs we need to track to make sure that customers are happy. It could be downtime, it could be first time right, it could be poor experience they have when something goes wrong. Okay, so we can start with this data, creating KPIs that are easier to track than doing it by hand or doing it in Excel spreadsheets. Okay, we need to start thinking about, and I'll give you an example of this at the end of this presentation, is whatever manual processing that we are doing, how can we eliminate that as much as possible and automate that? Okay, and most of the manual processes in finance and accounting is really document management. We are managing documents, we're keeping multiple copies of it, we are inputting things, we're copying from one Excel spreadsheet to another Excel spreadsheet. The question is, can we get rid of that? Because if you automate that, it also allows us to be better compliant because the machines are keeping track of all the logs as to who did what when. Okay, and quite clearly, if we do that, we go from slow processing world into a fast processing world. If time to delivery is important to you for within the finance function to improve efficiency across the organization. So clearly, even if we don't want to venture outside our accounting and finance domain, there are a lot of opportunities for us within accounting and finance to think about how would this digital transformation help me, the person in finance or the CFO, to improve my effectiveness and my efficiency and add value to the enterprise. Okay. Another survey here. Okay, so say, hey, you know what? Are actually finance people doing it? Well, yes, they are. They are. They are doing it in where we expect them to do it. Okay, wherever there is a manual processing of documents, that's where automation will be important. So clearly, 3 areas where we think automation would be helpful: processing accounts payable, processing accounts receivables, and doing planning and budgeting. So clearly, the smarter finance folks have already figured out that digital technologies is going to help us quite a bit. Okay. However, not all these transformation is going to create tremendous value for the firm. Meaning that, yes, you can digitally transform, reduce friction in accounts payable and accounts receivables, may not add too much value to the enterprise. But there are pockets where you can automate and also create value for the enterprise. For example, planning, budgeting, much better value. Volume and demand forecasting, much better value. Cash flow forecasting, much better value. Scenario management, what we call traditionally what if, much better value. So the point is, every organization has to look inwards and ask oneself, within the finance function, where would I add the most value to the enterprise, and where, given that, can I use digital journey or digital transformation for those particular functions where value add would be the most or value loss would be minimized. Okay. Are we ahead of the game? Are we behind the game? Well, companies are trying. Companies are trying. This is not something that happens overnight, as I mentioned, but we are seeing more and more finance functions are being digitized in some shape and fashion. And there are initiatives that are in place. We have a client in Florida. I was just talking to one of the VP finance folks, and he says, I have 40 transformation projects I have to undertake in the next 3 years. Okay, and I'm almost sure that at least half of them relate to digital transformation. Okay, so finance folks are trying to get to this digital transformation and be ahead of the game. Okay. Well, what about this robotic process automation or rapid process automation? In accounting, forget everywhere else. Well, tremendous benefits in our accounting finance function, okay? First is these robots, and I'll give you an example of it, they work 24/7. There is no union, there is no monthly peaks and valleys, they just do the work. We don't have to tell them, they just show up to work without we knowing it, okay? Number two, they do this error-free because they know what a PO is and they just process it. It's error-free, okay? Reduced error, of course, means customer happiness, either supplier or customer, so which is good. Number three, it also allows us to do process standardization. The bigger the firm or more diverse you are, more subsidiaries you have, you can now standardize the processing of it because you are using RPA to do that, okay? It also allows us to rapidly get audit trails and logs from a compliance perspective. It allows faster processing. If you are in a high wage city or high wage state or high wage province, you get a lot better ROI on these investments because it allows you to reduce OPEX in wages and salaries and allow the robots to do it more efficiently. Okay, so, and the other thing that does, which sometimes we underestimate, is many folks are doing repetitive work every day. Some, of course, like it because they're very good at it and they're very fast at it. Some folks actually don't like it. Question then for us from a retention perspective is, what can I automate in these processes that we believe are repetitive, can be potentially done with RPA, and free that person to do value added and hopefully more interesting work, or allow that individual to do multi-scaling. And if we do that, and we have empirical evidence on it, that retention increases as you increase the diversity of work for that person. The more activities they do that are diverse, the more engaged they are in the workforce and longer they're retained in the enterprise. So it's quite possible that this automation actually will lead to higher retention because we are taking away from them what one would call repetitive, non-value added, let's call it boring work, okay? And last one, if you are a growing firm, it's very difficult to grow to hire more and more people. Well, but if you automate your processes, then your scalability increases tremendously. Okay, so if you're growing at 30, 50, 60, 80% rate, there is just no way in the back office you can hire same number of people because volume of transactions went up. You just can't scale. So if you're thinking about your business challenge being capacity planning because the growth is overwhelming, a very nice problem to have, RPA would help in our own accounting function, let alone in the front office functions. Okay. Does it happen? Where are the buckets of problems we have? Well, buckets of problems we have is vision. What is it that we want to do? So digital vision not clearly defined, problem number one. Number two, and this is maybe apple pie and motherhood, that digital journey is not defined within the context of the business strategy. Meaning that what is that this journey is allowing us to do from a strategy execution perspective. Number three may be the fault of finance. We do not get or give clear mandate because these journeys are going to require investment, okay? Number four, and this is more to finance function than anybody else, is that we are so married to our processes and we think they're so robust and we've been doing it for so many years. Finance folks, also being extremely risk averse, are not ready for this transformational journey, okay? Number five is our knowledge of business, where finance can go, if you want to show leadership in this journey, to say, we have analyzed your business processes. Here are the 3 or 4 things I think you can do to improve your processes and increase efficiency. And number 6, of course, is capability and capacity. We simply do not have bandwidth today for those people who do their day-to-day job, for lack of better words, to take on more and more projects, because these projects are not necessarily non-time consuming. This is going to require time. This is going to require new training, new knowledge, new technology pieces, new. So change management is also a big problem. Okay, so finance functions, to transform them have been difficult because of the nature of our background, for lack of better words. Okay, but things are changing. Things are changing. We cannot, proverbial put our head in the sand and say, if the world is going that way, and if evidence shows that those companies who have gone that way have improved their performance, and if we are competing with them, we need to do the same thing. Okay. So question is, how 22nd century is this, or is it kind of easily doable? Okay. So we need to kind of put together this whole 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces of our business and our technology in one place, create a digital transformation map to create a world-class finance function. So clearly, we need to provide, definitely today, doesn't require tremendous faith in getting there, real-time dashboards. Again, I'm assuming that data is granular enough and the quality is correct. Otherwise, old proverb, garbage in and graphics out. Okay, and advanced analytics for finance, which will be planning and budgeting. We use a platform, Board. It's a digital making platform, allows us to do everything in one platform. Okay, so just to let you know that these kinds of platforms are out there and we can use them effectively. Okay. Ignoring the platform, ignoring the software, it doesn't matter what software you use. If you are small, this could be Excel, for lack of better words. If you are thinking about digital transformation that finance function is going to lead, here are the buckets or circles that you need to consider and figure out where you want to implement digital transformation. Is it in budgeting, planning, and forecasting? Is it in financial consolidation? Do you have a challenge of modeling and optimization because your world is changing very frequently? Do we have problems of tracking strategy and its execution through KPI tracking as an example? Do people require interactive dashboarding that gives them real-time understanding? Or if not real-time, what happened until yesterday when they come to work today at 9 o'clock in the morning? Dashboards that are function or area specific, tailored to them. Are you concerned about predictive analytics because the data is coming at you and you have no way to do some prediction through human beings? Okay. How can we give them self-service analysis and reporting? And how can we give them what-if simulation? So I'm sure your circles would be different, but these are the kinds of circles we think about when finance needs to add value to the enterprise through digital transformation. Let me show you a use case of marrying RPA thought process with a technology platform. Okay, so think about this use case. This enterprise works in multiple currencies. And because works in multiple currencies, it requires exchange rates every day across these multiple currencies. In the pre-automation world, there have been business analysts, they had employed. One of their jobs, not full-time job, one of their activities was browse for important data, currency data from multiple information sources because we work in multiple currencies. Okay. So you go for currency rates to bank websites, you have stock prices from stock exchanges, you get commodity prices from commodity exchanges, you get data from payroll sheets and invoices. There are some analysis worksheets that are out there. There are some strategic documents that are out there. And these are all in Excel and human doing. People are processing it. It's all manual, okay? Well, here is one solution for this use case, okay? So here's the use case for exchange rates. Manually today, business analysts are opening bank websites, selecting the data range, they capture the exchange rates, they extract those exchange rates and store it in Excel. Of course, they close the browser. They open and put this data in multiple places because different people need it. Then somebody extracts the required information, store it in their Excel in the format, and finally load data into platforms. Okay. Well, you can see here, this is not something one would come excited to the office to do, because it is routine. Every day you're doing the same thing, and these are humans doing it. Well, once somebody sees this, one says, hold on, this surely can be automated because we know how to do that. Okay. Well, the solution would be then, you know what? Let's use a bot. Let that bot go out and open the website. Let that bot do all the automation that is required, create PDFs or create a data file, and directly put that into a place where other systems can go in and simply suck that data in as the way they want it. Okay. This is the real case done for an automotive manufacturing firm in Mexico. And this all was done in 45 seconds. Once the solution was implemented, this thing took 45 seconds every night to do, no human being involved. Okay. It is done today. This technology exists, has existed. We have technology vendors that are providing these solutions. Used to be extremely expensive maybe 10 years ago, extremely cheap now compared to what we had before. So the ROI on these kinds of investments is becoming better and better and better every time. And once you do it, you can apply it to multiple processes in your firm because the basis is already done. Okay. So don't get frightened. Unfortunately for this, as I mentioned in the beginning, there are multiple layers, multiple underlying technology layers. The good news is this is not a mystery anymore. These are almost out of the box, highly user, how should I say? The UI and the UX is very, very easy. If you have smart business analysts and maybe one or two IT folks, this can be done. As long as you have the right data and you know where you want to go and why you want to use this technology for. But these technologies are becoming more and more common. They are not only available for Fortune 500 companies, they're available now for mid-market companies, and the ROI can be significantly good if you choose the right problem to tackle. So don't tackle low value problems, tackle high value problems. And once the enterprise gets used to, hey, we tackled it here, can we tackle it here as an example, okay? So what actions can we take? Well, really 7 actions, right? Try to think about, how do I bulletproof a frictionless world between my ERP systems and my stakeholder interaction platforms? I could be B2B, I could be B2C, I could be manufacturer to a customer, doesn't really matter. I could be a distributor, doesn't matter, okay? And make sure that it's always on, it's available everywhere and on every device, okay? So you have to embrace the cloud. Number 2, as I mentioned more than once, I think, is the biggest source of frustration is these technologies require us to have source data that is clean and available with the right latency. If you want it every hour, it should be available every hour, and right granularity. So we can put multidimensional visualization on it. Okay, so this multidimensionality is important because C-suite wants to drill down to the source of the problem when they see something red. Okay, and if you don't have the drill down capabilities because your data is not multidimensional, people are get frustrated. Okay, number 4, and we can do it ourselves, automate budgeting, forecasting, planning, and FP&A function, because that's where we spend time. That's where we ask our C-suite managers to spend time on. Okay, number 5, which you can do yourself, so to speak, is automate all the functions you have that you believe are time consuming, and allow your users of this information to be self-served, as opposed to them coming to you and asking you information, okay? That requires you or us in finance function to invest in people and give them multi-skill, so build agility in our folks. And you can see here, these are multiple components of technology. So some of it is going to work, some of it is not going to work. I always say do like a proof of concept, because we're going to fail. there'll be small failures. So one of the things we have to do a little bit is let's be courageous about it. Every new technology and technology change requires a little bit of acceptance of failure. So let's do small failures, not big failures. So don't go gung-ho on something and create a 3-year plan. Just go sequentially. Let's do phase 1, let's do phase 2, let's do a proof of concept, make sure it works, and then go production. Just like any other technology implementation, we think about from perspective of minimizing risk. Okay, so you have to do it right. You have to do it right. Otherwise, we'll never become a butterfly here. Okay. Natalie, any questions by any chance?
Thank you so much, Vijay. That was great. Yes, we did have some questions come in, so I'll just read them off. First one is, this all sounds very technical. We are a small company. How do we do this?
Yes, I'm sorry. I cannot give a better answer than what I'm giving now. It is technical. So the smaller you are, it's going to be really difficult for you to do this internally. You may have to go outside and say, help me identify the problem, or even here is my problem, can I get help? I think it's really, yeah, if you are very small, this is not going to help, except maybe in planning and budgeting. I mean, there are many software products out there that will allow you to automate your planning, budgeting, forecasting function, and even at times reporting function. I mean, we are a Microsoft partner. For example, Power BI now has become really cheap. Desktop version is free. The cost for a user is $10 or something per month per user. This used to be like $40 per month per user with other technologies. For small firms, the visualization, planning and budgeting, easier. Predictive analytics, machine learning, AI, probably not even needed given you are small.
Okay, great.
Next, Natalie.
The next one is, who should be leading this? It can't be the CFO.
Why not? Okay, so let me step back. I shouldn't say that because people tell me in the finance function, Vijay, we have to do everything now. We don't have time. Perfectly understandable question. I think the CFO has to lead, and the only way the CFO can show credibility as a leader is first transform the finance and accounting function. Okay. However, if you're thinking about the digital transformation at the enterprise level, it's clear that the CFO or the finance function cannot be the leader, but they have to be an extremely enthusiastic enabler. For example, if the chief revenue officer requires a lot more insights on the customers, then they have to come to finance, or at least finance has to come to them and say, how can I help to give you some ideas about how this can be done? Okay, so in certain cases, finance must lead. I think I always say, lead your own house first before you tell somebody else to clean their house. Okay, and then let's see whether the CRO is leading it or not. In certain mid-sized to large companies, this leadership function goes to the CIO, not the CTO, but the CIO. The CIO meaning the person in that position understands the technology component, but most importantly, understand the business needs and can link the two between business needs and the technology component.
You make it sound so easy, Vijay.
Well, hopefully it's not that difficult. Let me put it this way.
All right, the other one, the last question we have is, we are an established company. Where do you typically start for digital transformation?
Oh, I think I may be repeating my answer. First, if you're wearing a finance hat in your enterprise, first start this transformation within finance. I always have seen people say, well, finance isn't doing it. Why are they asking us to do it? Or number two is, in many cases I've seen in enterprises, there are what I would call C-suite members who always want to be at the leading edge, not bleeding edge, but leading edge. And the question then is, how can we in finance support their desire or aspiration to be kind of world-class in digitizing their customer or stakeholder interaction? Okay, so sometimes it has to start from within finance. Sometimes finance has to assist what I call this change agent that you may have in your C-suite, who are technology, who desire use of better technology, and we need to support them. Again, take baby steps, don't have to take giant steps, but that will be another way to start this journey within finance, or finding a risk taker, a technology aspirational C-suite member, and support that member.
Absolutely. And, over the last 18 months, it's become even easier. It isn't a question of if, it's, how and when. So this
Absolutely,
is great.
absolutely. Yeah, and we've seen that.
Yeah. Okay, well, those are all the questions we've received. I want to thank you all for joining. We know it isn't easy to find an hour in your day. We really appreciate it. We know that these are some phenomenal concepts that everybody is dealing with, and we are here to, again, answer your questions. If you'd like to move forward with any of the concepts that Vijay has discussed, please reach out to us, crg@crgroup.com. You can book a consultation. And don't worry, we've seen every type of organization, and we've seen it all in the last 30 years. So we're here to offer kind of our guidance, our assistance, our recommendations with where to get started. If you'd like to access the first 2 videos, they're already posted. So thank you all again. Thank you so much, Vijay. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Thanks, Natalie. Thank you, guys.